Hi, everybody. Welcome to the QB School. I'm fired up for this one. X's and O's, deep dive pass pro. From a quarterback perspective, what are the most important things? How do you learn it? How do you talk about it? At the NFL level, all the way down to youth football, we are diving into the details, the nuance, 4 NFL playbooks, bunch of NCAA examples. I am fired up for this one. Get ready. Here we go. Welcome to the QB School. All right, you dig this kind of content and you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, get the notifications, let you know when we go live, when we put out new content. Then, in addition, get nuts, join, okay? Get a membership to the QB School, get a badge after your name, support the channel, get these emojis, come at me in the live stream, have fun with it. Again, I appreciate the support for the channel as this thing continues to grow. All right, Pass Pro for me, kind of an evolution of learning about this process, but really the essence of it, where I got my best understanding of it, came from my second year in New Orleans for the Saints, the offensive line coach, Jack Henry. So really, my coordinator at the time was Mike McCarthy. He was my coordinator my first 3 years in the league. He really had some philosophical, foundational pillars that we learned, we kind of live by, that I still kind of think about and talk about Pass Pro. And we'll get into that. But really, the guy who sent the details and nuance of this thing for me was the offensive line coach at the time there, Jack Henry. And really what I did, and I'm not sure where I got the idea from. Someone gave it to me. I didn't come up with it on my own. But in the NFL, the short day of the week is Friday. And so Friday, you get out of there at like 2 o'clock. Well, I asked Jack, he probably hated me for this, but I asked him basically if I could meet with him after every Friday short day for like an hour, less than an hour, 45 minutes, and we would go over one specific protection, go over everybody's responsibility, roles, calls, what we're thinking, why we do it, the essence of it, kind of the marrow of that protection. And we did that every single week, so that by the end of the year, week 17, I was locked in and had basically a deep dive, good understanding of every single pass pro in the entire system. Now we're a high volume system, and there's a bunch of carryover between most protections, and I'll talk about that today. But the essence of this for me really came from Jack Henry in New Orleans. So I got to say, shout out to him. Thank you very much, because I appreciate it and still use the things I learned in those conversations today, and they will be in this video. So I mentioned it earlier, Mike McCarthy, head coach in the Dallas Cowboys right now, my offensive coordinator, really taught me how I think about pro quarterback pass protection understanding and what's important when both building a protection unit and understanding it for playing quarterback. And so really the essence of it to me comes down to just really simple math. That's going to sound very, uninspiring, but that's what it is. But it's not quite as simple as saying, hey, we've got 5, they're rushing 4, we're good to go. Really, the essence of Pass Pro for me is always thinking about numbers and matchups. And so we want as many double teams as possible. And that's really the same way I think about it, the run game too. But in the pass game, nothing is passive about pass protection. It's not good enough to just have 5 one-on-one blocks. That's not great pass protection. You're not going to be able to hold up very long. So we're looking for the best and most efficient use of double teams. And so how you get to that is different by the type of pass protection that we'll talk about in here. So the first one we're going to talk about is really kind of a solid pass protection. When I think solid pass protection, that usually means the line is going to the Mike linebacker, the middle of the 3 linebackers. They are blocking the Mike in pass protection. And so there's any different iterations you can do for different ways to block solid pass protection. But if the 5 offensive linemen are blocking the 4 defensive linemen and they're going to the Mike in addition, it usually creates a really solid pocket for a quarterback. So it's often called pocket protection. I'm used to calling it solid protection when the line is going to the Mike or the middle of the 3 linebacker types. Now, the most common one, and the one that we're going to spend the most amount of time on today, is usually called slide protection. Heard it called sort protection, heard it called a bunch of different things, but the essence of it is the offensive line is sliding to a particular linebacker to start. Now, it's not a man scheme per se, it's a man area zone combination. But the essence of it is you are sliding or sorting in one direction for the offensive line. And it depends on how many people are sorting, how many linemen. If there's 5 offensive line, you can have 3 offensive linemen slide, you can have 4 offensive linemen slide, or usually the 2 normals. You can also have 5 full offensive linemen slide one direction. And so we're going to spend a lot of time on that slide protection. But the thing that I want us to understand before we get going is solid protection, and then this is just drop back too. So solid drop back protection. The line is usually going to and blocking the mic. In slide protection, the offensive line is just what it sounds like, sliding or sorting, going to a certain linebacker. It can be weak, strong, doesn't matter what it is. They're sliding to a certain linebacker. And so those are the two main differences. Before we get going, I want to make sure we're speaking the same language, because we're going to talk a lot about slide or turn or sort protection here as we get going. So I mentioned earlier, it's about as many double teams as we can possibly get, or numbers in our favor. And this is straight from the New Orleans playbook. I remember Mike McCarthy saying this every year in quarterback school for me. Drop back pass protection. The essence of pass protection is to create as many 2-on-1s, 3-on-2, and 4-on-3 situations for the protection unit. This will assure the launching point for the quarterback to throw the ball. Note, nobody, defenders, runs through the A and B gaps. Always protect the A and B gaps. And that is the next critical point I want to talk about. So the A and the B gaps are the inside gaps. The A gaps are the two gaps right off the center. If I'm the center, the two gaps right here are the A gaps. The guards next to him, the gaps outside the guards, are the B gaps. So just basically think the 4 inside gaps on an offensive line. No one in any drop back pass protection, in any pass protection I can think of, should be able to run through those free. And we'll talk a lot more about that as we get going, but free means without someone touching you. You should have a center, a guard, or a tackle hit you at the line of scrimmage if you are running through there as a defender. And so it was always a good thing for me. Once I understood that, I felt a lot more confident saying, hey, I might have a C gap defender, meaning the third gap, someone running at me that I'm going to have to deal with. But I know that when our offensive line is locked in and the pass protection unit's locked in with the back and the tight ends, that I will never have someone run free through the A and B gaps. There's an element of trust. That's where you hear these quarterbacks say, they're out there seeing ghosts, or they feel the pressure of the pocket. Well, when you know your A and B gaps are solid and solidified, both scheme-wise and understanding, and you actually have to block it. We're talking a lot scheme because we're talking pass protection from the quarterback perspective. I'm not talking technique on how to blunt someone at the line of scrimmage, or where to put your hands, or what your pass set looks like if you're an offensive lineman. I'm talking just from the quarterback perspective. A and B gaps, no free runners ever, is a great feeling. But once you understand that, you got to understand how they get to that and where we will be hot if we have to be hot or throw side adjusts, which we'll talk about as we get going. So I'm always a little hesitant to play PowerPoint or video karaoke here and read something that's on the screen. But what we're going to talk about right now are slide rules. So what this means, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, is we are sliding, doesn't matter weak or strong, we are sliding to a specific linebacker. And so I'll let you all pause this and read it if you want. But the essence of this thing is that we are going to move a certain number of linemen, usually based on who's covered or who's uncovered. It doesn't really matter for the quarterback. You have to know which linebackers are sliding to. That's why I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. But basically, it depends on how many people are sliding based on the front that we'll talk about. But we need to know in slide protection, we are sliding or moving to a specific linebacker or linebacker type position. And so there's just that understanding of knowing, well, are we sliding 4 people? Are we sliding 3 people? How many people are going on the slide? And therefore, how many people are they accounting for? So once you understand that as a quarterback, you're able to negotiate where your hots and sites are. I want to take this opportunity to thank this video's sponsor, TeamSynced. TeamSynced is a great app for anyone in sports. It's made its name in college athletics, but it's moving into high school sports. We use it at Patrick Henry for our high school communication program for the football team, and it is great. It's basically the perfect element for all your housing communication. We have our calendar there, we have messaging, we have documents, files, different ways to communicate. Basically, it's the end-all be-all for our schedule. Parents love it. Students know exactly where they have to go to know exactly where the next thing is on the calendar. It's great for me because it's adaptive. I can make changes in real time, change locations, change different times for meetings, practices, all those things. Really detailed opportunity to make sure everyone's on the same page. So if you get a moment, get in that link. It's going to be in the description of the video. Check it out. You're going to get free access through May by using that link. Make sure you tell them that the QB School sent you. Check them out. Thanks again, TeamSynced. So for the first example here we're doing a slide here. We've got 4 down defensive linemen. Really easy to see. End, tackle, tackle, end. Now this is straight from the Saints playbook. We are sliding weak. So this little box, and this is the same way that I do it to this day. Not the greatest drawing in the world, but this box tells you who the line is covering for. They are responsible. Our 5 offensive linemen are going to the will and the 4 down. So we'll talk about what we do with these 2 guys, but this is how I think of it, understand it. Slide protection, our 5 offensive linemen going to the will. Now it changes a little bit when we get in an odd front here. So an odd front here, all of a sudden now, these are the 5 we're going to. So really, to me, this is a man on block here, and we're getting a 3-person slide to the will based on the even front. We get an odd front, meaning 3 defensive linemen, right? Well, now we're going to get a 4-man slide. So these 4 are being picked up from the guard over. That's what I mean by you have to understand how many people are sliding based on what the front is. And it's usually based off the first uncovered lineman. So tackle, covered. Guard, uncovered. He's sliding. Boom. 4. There it is. Tackle, pseudo covered. Guard, covered. Center, uncovered. Now we're sliding. These 3 right here. Boom. Those 3 sliding that way. So just understanding the difference between a 4-man front and a 3-man front on your slide and sort protection as we get going here. So now let's start talking adjustments to slide protection. We know we're sliding to a specific linebacker type. We know we have a certain number of offensive linemen in the slide, but it's not a marriage. And what I mean by that is you're not locked on that linebacker type no matter what the look. It's just a starting point. It's a foundation. There are principles tethered to it that allow us to change what that slide looks like. And that's why the flexibility and adaptability of this protection is why so many people use it. And so when we talk slide, now we're talking, this is specifically me learning Pass Pro is through the West Coast system, but it's applicable through any slide protection. I'll use the terminology of multiple systems here, but I want us to understand that there are adjustments to the slide. So if we're sliding to the will, okay, just in the example we just had there, 4 down, even front, we're sliding to the will. Well, if we want to change where that's going to go, we can make different calls. Now, depending on the offense you're in, you maybe just change the number that you're sliding to. You know, it's as simple as redirecting to a different guy, like pointing, going from 52 to 54 or 44 to 42. Or certain schemes have calls, whether they're base calls, joker calls, you call it strawberry ice cream. It's an understanding, a communication setting that everybody knows if we make a certain call, we're going to kick the declaration or the slide to a specific guy, and that's going to change the rules for the entire pass protection unit. So in the West Coast world, it was called a base call. And so to me, a base call was always to take away a strong dog. And all that did was really kick the slide from a will to the mic. So I'll let y'all read this if you want to, but this is a good example of it here. This is just normal 6-man slide protection, okay? Let's say the tight end's going out, and you can tell it's old school because there's 2 backs and a tight end in there. So really it's 6-man slide protection. Normally the line would be going right here to the will. Well, when they change it, we get a base call. It kicks it over to the mic. So that's all it does is remove this slide to where they're going. So just like this in the odd front on the next one, odd front base rules would be these 5. We get a base call, it kicks it over. Boom, over 1. So now they're just taking care of the box, which can be a great thing as a pass protection unit. Again, it goes back to basically a solid call where you're protecting the inside out. You lose a little bit of the double team elements, but you're a lot more solid at the point of attack for the launch point of the quarterback. So just more examples of base calls where you're kicking the slide. Normally the slide rule would take you out to the nickel will. We're going to base it into the mic. Again, normal slide rule, kick it to the nickel will. Base call, we kick it to the mic. And again, the reason you want to do that, there's a bunch of different reasons, but the main one for me was always you don't necessarily want your line sliding out and blocking a DB type. You'd much rather have the line taking care of the linebacker type and have the back block the DB type, the dime Mike or the dime Sam. So there's just different flexibility built into the system, and some systems have words or calls. Base was one in the West Coast. Now, the next adjustment that I always used to chuckle at was called a tom call in the West Coast world. And it's just that simple. it literally, the story that I was always told, I'm not sure if it's true or not, but we'll go with it, is that when the 49ers were doing this, Joe Montana, instead of making a base, which really a base, the reason why you wouldn't like a base, or one of the reasons why you wouldn't like a base or a redirect with just one word, is you're basically communicating with 6 people. You know, all the offensive linemen have to get the call, and the back behind you has to get the call for you to feel safe and protected. And you're talking about your livelihood when we're talking about pass protection as a quarterback. So an easy way to change that is say we're in that slide protection, we're sliding to the will. Well, now they're going to hit us with a free safety and a will, 4 to a side. Well, in the West Coast world, I want to say off the top of my head, it was called a joker, would redeclare, you would move from the will to the free safety on the slide. Well, we don't necessarily want that, because then the offensive line's blocking the free safety and the back is blocking the will. I'd much rather have the back block the free safety. So how do you do that? What's the call for that? Tom, right? That simple. And the story behind it was, I want to say Tom Rathman. I know it was Tom Rathman. Tom Rathman, the fullback for the 49ers back in the day. Joe just used to turn around and go, Tom. And it would tell him in his pass pro, hey, go back the other way, pick up 4 weak or 4 strong. So a Tom call in the West Coast world is just that. We'll see here, there are a handful of examples of it here. So say we're in a, again, slide right here. They're going to go just right out the gate, the offensive line, slide into these 5. While the back normally would probably have a duel from here, 1 to 2 off the edge here. We turn around, Tom call, he goes back and blocks the backside. Here's the example I was talking about. We're sliding to the will right here. Instead of getting a redirect to the number 4 weak, we just turn around, give a Tom call or Tom signal. The back normally going here, 1 to 2 on a duel. All of a sudden he goes back and blocks 4 weak. Tom call. And the last adjustment I want to talk about when we're talking 6-man slide protection is what you do versus a bare front. Now, again, we've talked about an even front where you're going to get the slide usually be a 3-person slide from the uncovered center to an odd front, which would normally be a 4-person slide from the uncovered guard. But in a bare front, the entire core is usually covered, meaning the 3 interior linemen. So what do you do versus that? Well, technically, the front side tackle is uncovered, and you would get a full slide by the offensive line, which is an answer. It's not necessarily the answer that you want to live in all the time, though, because then your back is blocking a defensive end from the line of scrimmage, potentially. Not a great matchup anywhere, especially in the league. So there are different variations to be able to block bare fronts. Oftentimes, the code word is a 5-0 call or a sync call, sync out call. And all that does is tell basically it's 5 one-on-one blocks. You got the core covered, the 2 guards in the center, they're going to have one-on-one blocks. And then the 2 tackles are going to big duel or basically pass set to the outside widest rusher. So we'll look at a few images, but there are only so many different ways to handle the bear in a 6-man slide front or any pass protection. And so once teams realize what you're doing, you got to be able to have answers to mix it up. So you want to have the ability to go full slide and 5-0 or sync out. And so you'll see centers oftentimes raise up, put their hand up 5-0, or do full slides where they're pointing one way, declaration. And defenses know this, and so they stem in and out of bear all the time. But you have to be sound and understand what's going on. But even when you get a sync out or 5-0 call in a bear, if you're a quarterback, you got to know you have 5 one-on-one blocks. That's the number one principle of what we don't want, right? We want numbers in our favors on the slides or on the solid protection, specifically the slides. That's why we're doing slides. So we want numbers in our favor. 5 one-on-one blocks anywhere, not good. Got to get the ball out of your hands usually pretty quickly. So here are some examples of a 5-0 call down here at the bottom. Again, bare front, the core is covered right here. Core covered. So they're going to make a 5-0 call, and all that's going to do is set the tackles out on these wide rushers. Usually one of them is an end, and usually one of them is a kind of a dog. And so it's 5 one-on-one blocks, and now the back duel goes from usually 1 to 2. The opposite of that, again, is that full slide. So again, we get a bare front. Okay, core is covered. Technically, the tackle is uncovered. We're going to get a full slide. So we're going to go all the way here, basically the gap to your left, the inside gap. And the back's going to come off. Now the back's got a duel off of Sam and a Mike. Not good. You don't want your back blocking guys at the line of scrimmage very often in the NFL. Now, the majority of this video so far has been offensive line thinking with six-man slide protection. Now, I want to make sure I talk about the back's responsibility, because the back's responsibility is just as important, especially to the quarterback's understanding of where they will be hot. So if we have a six-man slide protection, we're sliding to a linebacker or linebackers, depending on the front, and the back usually has what's called a dual read. And what that means is it's usually he has two people that he might be responsible for. So it might be the Mike and the Sam, or the Mike and the nickel Sam, or the, dime Mike and the nickel Sam or Will, whatever. There's two of them. So oftentimes you'll see quarterbacks, if you back there, anybody who's watched the Mike point video knows that there's a lot of pointing to the mic. Well, there's also quarterbacks that usually point to. You see them come out like this, and why are you pointing? Well, you're pointing for two reasons. One, for the back, so that they know where their duel is, and the other is for the wide receivers. So they know that if these two guys come, we're going to have a hot or a sight adjustment. So it's just as important as the mic declaration is the hot, where we're hot from. And so really that's usually over the dual read for the back. And so if the back gets both those people to come, again, you want them to protect inside out. A and B gaps always protected, right? So from there, we're going to go inside out. Hopefully the outside guy is the free guy, and we throw hot, get the ball out of our hands. So that's the essence of the back element of this slide protection, often called a dual read from the backfield. So talked so far about the West Coast world. Now let's dive into the digit six-man slide protection. So again, because we're learning it, doesn't matter what you call it, six-person slide protection, we're going to go from a totally different offense. They're going to call it something totally different, but the essence of it, the underlying principles are the same. Slide protection, sword protection, whatever. Six-person. It's the exact same. Now, we can't make the same calls because those people have no idea what we're talking about, base, tom, things like that. But we can just understand where the declaration is, where the hot is, the dual reads are the same. So let's take a look at a little digit offense pass pro, a little ace right. In the West Coast, they called it jet. In digit, they call it ace. So ace right here tells the back he's going right. He's got the dual read. 1 to 2. The offensive line going right there. Whoop. Right? Center's uncovered. That kicks the slide out. Three-person slide just that way. You see the man front side. Again, all these examples, the same thing. Guard uncovered with an under front. We're going to get a four-person slide to the nickel will. There it is. The back, dual, 1 to 2. Again, you can see all these drawings with the dotted line. 1 to 2, dual. 1 to 2, dual. Again, odd front, four-person slide. They're going right here. It's not quite the same drawing. I think West Coast world for pass protection, so I still do my little drawing. If you looked at a lot of my playbooks, it would be just like that. You got to know where the duel is. So if both these people come, if both these defenders come, we get hit with this and this, we're throwing hot, probably right here to this Y. So that's what I'm talking about. Dual read with a slide. All it is, you just went to another team and walked right into the huddle, and we're a master of slide protection. So when you get into these playbooks, they have 8 billion different examples. And it's really good from a standpoint of trying to understand exactly what's going on to really just go in there and see. You identify where the slide's starting from. Uncovered lineman, boom, three-person slide, there it is. You see the dual every single time. You start to see the patterns, right? Dual. Odd front, uncovered lineman right here, four-person slide. There it is, where the dual is. So your hot is always going to be to the dual side. So again, really simple to see, same type of thing. It's all based on the front, where the slide's going to be, man the front side, slide the back side, understand where your hot is, where your dual is, and if both these people come and we don't get a redirect, we are throwing some sort of variation of hot. It's just that simple. Pass pro for the quarterback is about understanding where you're hot. And if we are hot, meaning that two people are coming on the back, then we're going to need to find a way to get the ball out of our hands before we get hit. Now you got to know, how hot are you, right? Are you burning hot? Are they both coming from the line of scrimmage? Or are they coming from normal depth? Or are they coming from the heavens if it's a DB? So how much time do you have? Can you bail? That type of pocket understanding, that's where you start separating guys who understand how to throw with pressure, throw into pressure, deal with pressure, and start to really like when defense coordinators pressure you, because there are big plays to be made. Again, just more examples. I think it's good to point as many pictures as possible here so you can see all the different slides and fans and where these duals are for the back. So depending on what the front is, you see exactly where the issues are, all sorts of potential problems. You know, I'm looking at a handful of fronts right now that I might have issues with depending on where people come from. But again, this is just an NFL playbook. Every type of front you could possibly get versus that Pass Pro. So the images that we just looked at were 2x2 6-man slide protections. Now let's talk a little bit about 3x1 slide protection. So it's a little bit cleaner in 3x1 because you're almost always going to go to the will. In 2x2, you can get kind of issues on both sides. 3x1, it's a little bit harder because you're only going to get hit with that 4 weak from the boundary. It makes it a little bit more difficult. So again, 3x1 on all these examples. Now we see the 3 receivers over here. That's going to set the nickel Sam always out to the field. So we're almost always going to be going to the will. Almost always going to the will. Again, going to the will depending on how many people are in this slide. And so you see the back basically always has the dual from the Mike to the nickel Sam. Mike, nickel Sam, dime, nickel Sam, depending on what personnel they're in with the 32 front. But again, the essence of this is the problem here is that if you get hit with a field dog zone team, meaning that they bring strong dog or 2 linebacker types from the field. So if this nickel Sam and Mike is their number 1 blitz, well, then you don't necessarily want to live in 6-man slide protection, or you got to have a redirect going to this Mike for the offensive line because there's no easy way into it. Now, you're going to have built-in hots for sure, but just that understanding, especially, a few years ago when this was the in vogue thing to do, it's not quite as common anymore, but this idea being that if you're always going to get 2 from the field, you probably need a different Pass Pro. Here's that 3x1 6-man slide description in case you really want to dig into the weeds here. So we did West Coast, we did Digit, 6-man slide protection, both of them. And you can see that the elements, the principles are the same. Now I'm quickly going to show what we were doing in Minnesota, which was kind of a hybrid group, and then what we were doing in Cincinnati too. Doesn't matter what you call it. That's the great thing about it. Slide protection, 6-man slide protection, specifically offensive line is sliding to someone, the back or protector is usually doing a dual read. The hot will be to the dual read, and then the sight adjust, we haven't talked a lot about because it's more rare than throwing hot, is going to be to the slide side. So if you got 2 to the slide side and you didn't get what would in the West Coast world would be a tom call, you would have to throw sight adjust. Now in the West Coast, sight adjust didn't exist when I was in it, but in the Digit it was a lot more prevalent because they didn't allow you to do tom calls or make those types of adjustments all the time. So it was more sight adjust locked into the wide receivers. So again, it's just different answers for the same problems, but it's fun to see how these different teams talked about it, named it. You call it whatever you want. It's 6-man slide protection. Again, with Minnesota, you can see the QB at the bottom. Alert, hot for 2 on the back. It's the same. Things don't change. Again, their drawing's a little bit different, but you can see the offensive line going out to the nickel will. The back locked in with these cool little triangles with the dual 1 to 2, 1 to 2. Again, going to the will for the offensive line. Going to the will, going to the will. The dual's the same. Totally different name. Doesn't matter. 6-man slide protection. If both these come on the back, then we need to find a way to throw hot. All right, now we're into Cincinnati. The Paul Alexander show. Now we called it turn protection. Doesn't matter what you call it. Slide, sort. There might be very subtle differences, but the essence of this thing is the same. Again, the quarterback has the ability to redirect. I'll leave this up here in case you want to pause it and read the whole thing, but let's dive into some examples. It's the same protection. Now, the halfback had some serious scanning to do in this system, but the essence of this thing was the exact same. Offensive line. And we called it Lee. We're going to the left here. Guess Ray is to the right. Again, Lee tells the offensive line, going to the will. Will. The back here has got the dual, 1 to 2, to scan. All that scan means is that he's going to then take that backside 4 built-in tom call for short for the West Coast world. So you can see he's doing quite a bit back there. It's got the best seat in the house. You got to protect the franchise. But again, the dual read is the dual read. So again, it's just 6 people. We're getting a slide to the will. It doesn't even have to be the will, right? It can be whatever linebacker type is there. We could just as easily slide to the Sam and have the dual from the Mike to the will to mix it up. But it is slide protection, sliding to some linebacker type, giving a dual on the back. If you get 2 on the back, you're going to have to built in a hot or quick throw. So now I feel like we've got a pretty good understanding of what 6-man slide protection is. One more time, sliding to a linebacker type. Depending on how many people are in the slide, depends on how many people we're sliding to. There's a bunch of adjustments as far as who we can slide to. It's just a starting point. It's not a marriage. The back, or the protecting person, can be a tight end just as easily, usually has a dual read. If 2 people come on that dual read, if the dual read is both of them, we have to have a built-in hot. That is throwing hot. If one person comes too many outside the slide, so if we're sliding to the will, which is the number 3 to the left, to one side, and we get hit with a safety or DB type, we have to throw a side adjust, which is built in usually to the protection unit or the offense. So side adjust, backside, hot, front side. In 6-man slide protection, the hot is 2 off the protecting back. I want to thank this video sponsor one more time, Team Synced. It is a great communication app for all your athletic needs. In fact, I can't imagine being the head football coach of a program and not using this app. It's basically our all-encompass communication device. Parents love it. Students know exactly where to find any sort of changes. It's fluid. You can make real-time changes. I've got nothing but good things to say about it. If you can, check it out. They're a big supporter of the show. I appreciate it. Let's keep the video going. So let's look at a few college football examples here. Let's say we have slide protection on to this way. So the back is going to be sliding. Now, who would the offensive line be sliding to? Technically, depending on how they talk about who's who in the zoo here, if they know for sure that one of these guys will never blitz, or if it's a game plan decision, or depending on who the actual nickel is versus the safety, could tell you who they go to. But if there's nobody back here, meaning if this safety is in the middle of the field, here's the beautiful thing about slide protection. You go to the first dangerous threat to the slide. So if they're sliding to the right, there's the center's uncovered. So we're going to get a slide, 3-person slide. Who should they slide to? Should they slide all the way out here? Well, this guy's not blitzing because he has to cover this guy. They should slide right here. So now you get these guys taken care of. And now the back goes 1 to 2 up top because we got a potential cap 0 look down here. So there's no reason to slide all the way out to this guy. So we're going to slide right here. Boom. Back 1 to 2 locked in. Now let's see it from the end zone. So again, easy to see. We got that center field player coming down. We've got a potential 0 situation here. How can we possibly block this up? We've got 5 offensive linemen and a back. We want to slide uncovered right here. We're going these 3 by these 3. We're going back 1 to 2. So there's a DB type out here outside the screen. So if we get hit with 2 of any of these 3, we're going to have to throw hot. That's 6-man slide protection with where the back is set right now. Now let's go Oregon in the red zone. Gets a little bit harder. Again, keeping it simple here. Got the back to the left, right? So the duel is going to be on that side. The offensive line. Looks like the center is uncovered. So we're going to get a 3-person slide. Who are they going to slide to? Well, to me, for my money, we got 3 linebacker types right here. Technically, this to me would be the will. So these 3 offensive linemen are going to these 3 right here to start. The back is going to be 1 to 2. Now it gets condensed down here in the red zone. That's why I put them in here, because these guys start creeping in. Let's just hypothetically go here. Say we think we're going to get hit with a 4-week here. So this free safety is coming down. He's going to blitz. Now we could give, in the West Coast world, a Tom call where he just comes back and blocks him. Or we could change this to make him the will. So he comes down. We know he's blitzing. Well, now we tell the line to go all the way out to these 3. And then the back goes 1 to 2 to 3. So that's why people love the flexibility of this slide protection. It gives you answers to creepers and people that when you can see that they give away the blitz, we can change who we're sliding to. So here's that same play from the back end or the end zone. Technically, here's the will. Here's that free safety creeper. So the offensive line right here, center's uncovered. They're going 1, 2, 3 right here. This little triangle is where the slide's going to. These 3 over here, we got one-on-one, one-on-one. We got the back going dual read 1 to 2 to potentially scanning on the backside. Again, this free safety walks up. We know he's coming. We either give them a tom, sends this back right across if we're in the West Coast world. Otherwise, we get a redirect. So now we can make this guy the will. So the offensive line would be going these three right here to these three, and the back would be dueling 1 to 2 to 3 offside the screen. So again, you just got to understand where the offensive line is going and then how we are hot in that same protection, usually to the front side. Now you want to get nuts. An easy way to change this up for the defense, so the defense starts to know that we're sliding away from the back. Well, now we just scan back the other way. So now we just put the back on this side, but really it's slide left, right? So now there's a nickel will, who's off the screen. Say we want to go, say we don't think he's coming, so we want the line to slide right here to 13. So now we're going to get these three sliding right here to these three. I can clean up the image to those three, and now we have the back going 1 to 2 just from the offset. Doesn't change much, especially in 3x1. It's an easy turn. It's an easy changeup to be able to turn into that field pressure. All right, now looking at little Oklahoma. Now let's talk back on the left. So we're going to slide right. Okay, we're in an odd front. First uncovered lineman, guard right here. First uncovered lineman to the side of the pass pro. Guard right here. So we're going to get a 4-person slide. Who they sliding to? 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, right there. Those are the 4 that these 4 are sliding to. The duel, 1 to 2. So if we get hit with a strong dog, right here, 6-man slide protection, assuming this sniffer is out of there, that's what it looks like. That's throwing hot. Now we could get in the West Coast world, not Lincoln Riley's world, we would be able to give this thing a base call if we wanted to kick this thing in. So we normally would be going out here to these 2. Let's give it a base call. Now we're going to slide to these 2. Right? So now the offensive line is going right here, these 5. We're a lot firmer interior-wise, but now we're asking the back to do a lot. He's basically going 1 to 2 scan all the way on the backside. So you just got to know where your issues are. There are a bunch of different answers, ways to block different things, but you have to know where your potential hots are. I always never liked having hots on both sides. Just really hard for me, especially in gun, to catch, look left, look right, and get into some sort of read or drop. It's a lot easier for me to close off the field on one side and know I'm good this side, I'm hot, if they get me with 2 over here. So just what you're comfortable with, what I used to like doing, how I would operate, feel better, like I could play faster. And that's a wrap as far as Pass Pro. Hopefully you feel really good about understanding where our potential issues are playing quarterback. There's a number of different ways to do it. Solid, slide. I think the vast majority of people live in slide, sort, or turn, whatever you want to call it. Again, the reason that people like that is it provides a few things. It provides a little flexibility. It provides a numbers advantage. If they have a stud somewhere, we can slide towards that direction to hopefully have numbers in our advantage going in that direction. It also gives you that flexibility to be able to deal with showing blitzes or being able to protect yourself. The other thing that I want to reinforce is that all those slide protections allow you to always protect the A and the B gaps. Didn't show a lot of clips of bare fronts or any sort of like pluggers or guys walking into those A and B gaps, but there are specific answers that you can get into as far as squeeze calls to come down and protect those A and B gaps, to always for the quarterback to know that they're going to be secure. You don't have to worry about anybody running right next to the center and hitting you. And so it's a little bit easier in shotgun, but if you're under center, it's a great feeling knowing, hey, we're locked up, A and B gaps, we're good to go. I know where I'm hot. I got the 2 that I'm worried about. I know a potential side adjust with 2 on the front side, anything like that. Those things feel good when you feel comfortable with the protection. Now, we really only talked about one protection. There's any different number of ways you can do it. But once you get a mastery of that type of understanding for each protection, you feel really good about where you're hot, where you're not, where your eyes can be tethered to a pass protection, or a pass concept, knowing, hey, if my first read in a pure progression is to the left, well, I probably want to block up my right side. Or depending on what the shell or ceiling is doing, you want to have an idea of, okay, that guy's capped, or that guy looks like he might be coming. Let's redirect, block up that side, and let me deal with this to my face where I'm already going to be looking. So that's kind of the next step about understanding and tethering Pass Pro to pass concepts and how those things work together. But the first step is just understanding who's blocking who's who in the zoo, what's our best matchups, what's the underlying principle. The underlying principle is A and B gaps are protected. We're going to hopefully have our numbers advantage with the slide. We're going to slide hopefully to their best player, and then we're going to have to deal with a hot with 2 on the back or 2 on the protection back in any sort of dual read. So you got to understand where your duel is and where they're looking. So just like that, it feels like a lot. I think you all have a really good understanding of it after watching the video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I appreciate you. See you next time.